I'm going to talk to you just a little bit today about the things that cause hormones to be released, or the stimulus for hormonal secretion. You're going to see that these will fall into three basic categories of stimuli that lead to hormones being released. First, we'll do just an overview of what each one is, and then we'll talk a little bit more and look at an example of each. So the first type of stimulus, of course, is going to be a humoral stimulus. Humoral simply refers to the blood. In olden years, it was very common to hear body fluids referred to as the humors. Okay, so that's where that term came from. Neuronal should be pretty self-explanatory. It's when you have the nervous system that is going to stimulate hormones to be secreted. And then hormonal secretion of hormones. Well, that one may sound a little strange, but you'll see as we continue to discuss this that in many cases hormones cause other hormones to be secreted. All right, so let's look at these now in a bit more detail. We'll start with the humoral stimuli. Humoral, remember, refers to concentration of something in the blood. So these hormones are going to be released from their glands when the concentration of something changes in the blood. So it may be that nutrient levels have changed or ion levels in the blood have changed. One of the easiest to understand is the example that we have here on this slide, and that refers to parathyroid hormone, which is released from the parathyroid gland. So the parathyroid hormone is going to be released when blood calcium levels drop. Okay, so the calcium in your blood has dropped. When might this happen? Well, it's probably going to happen when it's been quite some time since you have eaten. So you've been sitting in lab for those 2 hours, and man, the time just seems to be passing so slowly, and you realize you didn't eat breakfast this morning and your stomach's starting to growl. Well, your blood calcium levels have fallen, as well as many other levels. So your blood calcium levels fall as that blood comes into the thyroid gland. The thyroid, and you'll hear more about this, is going to secrete an antagonistic hormone in the opposite case, when your calcium levels have increased. But we want to talk about these small little glands that are on the posterior surface of the thyroid, and those are your parathyroid glands. So when blood calcium levels drop, your parathyroid glands then are going to secrete parathyroid hormone. Okay, so now this being a hormone, it's going to be secreted into the bloodstream where it goes to target cells. Now, if you want to release calcium, get more calcium into your blood, where do you think those target cells might be located? Where do you store calcium? You store calcium in the bone. You knew that already, I'm sure. So these cells cells in the bone are going to be the targets of your parathyroid hormone, and it's going to cause bone to be broken down, and then that free calcium released into your bloodstream, so blood levels of calcium increase. Now, hopefully your instructors will tell you a little bit more about the relationship between parathyroid hormone and calcitonin, which is the hormone that's released from the thyroid gland. These two, remember, work together to maintain blood calcium levels. The second example we want to look at is the neural stimulus. Okay, so you have nerve fibers that are going to stimulate a particular hormone to be released. Now, the example I like to use on this one is the one that you see here with the adrenal gland. Okay, so this is your adrenal gland. Remember where your adrenal glands sit? They sit on top of the kidneys. Okay, so let's say that you have something happens and you're frightened all of a sudden, using the classic fight or flight response, right? You're walking through the woods and you come upon a bear. Well, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have neurons that are going to release epinephrine and norepinephrine quickly into the bloodstream, and you get that initial adrenaline rush where you feel like your whole body is warm and all that blood is rushing out to your skeletal muscles. Okay, so you have that initial adrenaline rush. Now, that's also going to be responsible for causing hormones to be released. Now, let's think about this. If you're truly going to have to fight that bear or run away from that bear, you need that initial burst of energy to jolt your body into action. Now that's going to be your epi and norepi that are released from neurons, okay, directly into the bloodstream, and they're released as neurotransmitters at that time. But they also are going to be released because of the sympathetic nervous system, okay? So your sympathetic nervous system has nerve fibers that innervates the adrenal gland, okay? Primarily we're talking about here the adrenal medulla, the middle of the gland, okay? So you have that initial burst of adrenaline, epi and norepi, from the nervous system, but then the nervous system stimulates the adrenal medulla to release epi and norepi into the bloodstream in a much more sustained release, okay? So this is going to stay in the bloodstream for a much longer period of time, because if you do have to fight or run away from that bear, you don't want just that a quick adrenaline rush, right? You want to have the energy to fight or to run, okay? So the sympathetic nervous system stimulates the adrenal gland to release epi and norepi into the bloodstream for that more sustained reaction. And then our final type of stimuli is hormonal stimuli. So the release of one hormone travels through the blood, targets another gland, and causes the release of an additional hormone. So you'll see here, and we'll be talking about this quite a bit, you have the hypothalamus up here that's going to release hormones that are going to target the anterior pituitary. Then the anterior pituitary releases hormones that target other endocrine glands. So let's look at these examples. We've got, in the first example, we've got thyrotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, targets the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary releases thyroid stimulating hormone, which then targets the thyroid gland, which releases T3 and T4, which increase your basal metabolic rate. All right, let's change colors here. We'll go with red. All right, our next example, the hypothalamus releases corticotropin releasing hormone. Okay, so the hypothalamus, it targets the anterior pituitary, which releases adrenocorticotropic hormone, which targets the adrenal cortex, which then releases several hormones, one of which is cortisol. All right, and the next one, we'll go with green. All right, so we're going to end up targeting the gonads. So the hypothalamus releases gonadotropin releasing hormone, which targets the anterior pituitary, which releases follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which target not only the testes but also the ovaries. But since we have the testis, we have a testis here, we'll go with that one. So your follicle stimulating hormone and your luteinizing hormone are going to cause several things to happen in the testes, one of which is to cause the secretion of testosterone. Okay, so you get the idea here of this pathway of secretion that began with your hypothalamic hormones targeting the anterior pituitary, which released hormones, which targeted glands that released other hormones. Now, that gives you a little bit of an overview as well of the pathway that's involved with hormonal secretion. All right, that's all I've got for you. I'll talk to you next time.